Cool. Okay, so the webinar has now started. Don't know whether we want to wait for a couple of people to join, or we just want to wait for a couple minutes. In that time, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Izzy, would you like to start off as, I guess, the newbie onto this?
I knew you'd do that to me. Yeah, so my name's Izzy. I'm the client services consultant here, obviously you know that. Yeah, I guess my main aim since doing this job since the beginning of September is to really bridge the gap between us as an agency, the TA procurement, recruitment teams at the companies and clients that we work for at the moment, to improve candidate and also client experience. That's what I do.
Great, cool. An introduction to me, I guess, unless you have gone on top our little series before. My name's Jacob, most people call me JP. I am the Global Director here at SEC with about 6 or so years of experience building biotech companies for cell and gene therapy companies over on the East Coast of America and doing a little bit more over on the European side now. Germany, which is good.
You're loving it.
Loving it,
Yeah.
yes. Definitely a different type of person to speak to. But I think actually on that note, what I find really interesting, especially with what we're talking about today, you know, the strategies for creating a really good candidate experience, is that there's so much overlap between what happens in the US and actually what happens over in Europe as well. You'd really think there would be some kind of cultural differences for what the experience looks like, but realistically it's exactly the same. And I think a lot of people get it right, a lot of people also get it really wrong at the same time, but I guess really we're going to be jumping into that today.
Yeah, I'm interested by that then. What are the main overlapping issues between the US and the EU's recruitment processes that you find?
I think the major one that sticks out from every single interview process that, or like company that I've jumped into, is clarity on timelines. I think it's obviously something that you come across a lot of the time, and I think all our consultants struggle with, is having clarity from the client or the recruitment team or even the hiring managers in terms of what the process looks like and what that timeline is. Knowledge is power at the end of the day. I keep saying it, I think every single time we jump onto this, but genuinely, if you can be clear from the get-go in terms of what the process looks like and what the timeline is for a candidate from start to finish, you're going to have a better experience no matter whether it's a positive or a negative outcome for a candidate.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. I think adding to the knowledge is power. I think a lot of time, especially with the hiring processes we're looking into at the moment, there's sometimes that people forget that actually the applicants are people. You know, they are people that sat behind a laptop putting in their application with thoughts and feelings, and they also want to be in control of, you know, their job search. They're the ones actively looking to have a new challenge, improve their life, whatever it might be, through the new job that they are looking for, and giving them that clarity and the, you know, respect to be very open with them and just say, for example, we were talking about timelines, you know, having that in a process, I think a lot of active candidates will find very nice, but also very helpful in terms of how they can manage everything else they've got going on through their other job searches as well. So yeah, it's a really important part.
Yeah, especially when speaking more on the US side at the moment in terms of the amount of layoffs. I think it's something like 457 companies in the last 18 months have made layoffs. At the start of the year, it was like 5,600 people in the biotech scene on the East Coast alone have been affected. But for those people, it's so demoralizing day in, day out, for example, with applying to jobs and not having clarity in terms of what the timeline is. You know, we've got people who have been out of the job market for nearly 2 years now. If they don't have clarity in terms of what the process looks like, when the market turns around, which it always does, like there will be a point where talent acquisition, recruitment teams, firms are going to be begging for people because there's not a huge amount of talent consistently coming through the doors of universities. They're going to have to go back to those people, right? Yeah. And that's exactly where those guys are going to be turning around and saying, actually, you never gave me feedback, or you weren't clear in terms of what the timeline looks like, you didn't help me at least have a good experience, I'm not interested. And we see it with our clients now, like a lot of them, where the market is so small that people don't want to reapply again in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3-4 years down the line.
Yeah.
And before I guess we get kind of really pulled away on this, I think it's really key to identify and understand actually why does a good candidate experience matter. We've got some stats here.
Yeah, do you want me to read the
Yeah,
stats?
you go through the stats.
I'll be the fact lady. Yeah, so obviously candidate experience matters, but the stats we have for you. 42% of candidates will not apply again after a bad experience. And a further than 22% of people and candidates who apply will actively advise their peers to not apply to certain companies due to the bad experiences they've had. And if that isn't shocking enough for you, I don't know what will help you. So yeah, I think, you know, it's really clear and obvious there that a bad candidate experience will not only impact your business short term, but also long term. You know, adding on to, you know, talent who's maybe not active at this point, but in the next 6 months are looking to make their next move, their friend next to them who's had a really bad experience will then not consider your company at all because they know that maybe they, for whatever reason, weren't treated with respect through the hiring process, or weren't given that feedback, or, you know, just weren't treated in the best manner. And I think that links really heavily to word of mouth. You know, these aren't, yes, they might tell their other colleagues and they might not apply, but think about all their friends that they also have in other areas of the sector who then also will potentially listen to them and not apply too. You've lost out on a very big pool of candidates.
Yeah, I think even like on a day-to-day basis, people can probably, like in any industry, can probably look back to maybe a process that they've taken and it's been terrible in terms of communication or understanding what's happening, or zero feedback, for example. And I think if someone came forward and said, hey, I'm thinking of applying to that company, what were your thoughts and feelings? You're probably going to be very honest with that person. I think for us, with our experience and what we noticed, I think I've had some experiences with companies over in the US and in Europe as well, but mostly in the US, where it has been a really streamlined process. And from the get-go, they've been really clear in terms of this is how many rounds of interviews there are. These are the types of questions we'll ask. This is who they're meeting with. This is the 24 to 48 hours in terms of feedback. And every single candidate that we've spoken to throughout that process, and at the end of the process, who was rejected for that final position, would love to go forward with that company again.
Wow.
Which I think speaks so much about just how simple and how important having a positive candidate experience is in any marketplace. And then on the flip side, we're working with other clients, for example, one over in Europe at the moment, where they're hiring aggressively in so many different geographical locations, but actually what they do in terms of the niche skill set is quite small. We've had so many candidates turn around at the end of the process, even, you know, if they've accepted offers saying, I actually wouldn't let my friends come into this process, or I'd give them like a pre-warning in terms of what the process is like, because it's really not clear and I've had a bit of a negative thought and wouldn't be interested in applying again.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, you know, a lot of my work's been focused in the Swiss and German markets, and we're really lucky to work with some of the top global pharma companies. And when I am sort of getting to that point in my screening where I am selling in the company, I've had some, even from the top 10 in the world, people say to me, absolutely not, I will not do a process with them.
Yeah.
Dream on.
Yeah.
They're a mess, things like that. So, you know, they're really interested in the opportunities you have. It's just unfortunate that previous bad experiences, and then unfortunately that gets linked to the brand's name, really does have an effect on whether you can secure that great talent that is available and would want to make a difference in your company. Just unfortunately not. after a bad,
Yeah.
bad experience.
100%. And with those top tens, what I found over the last kind of 6 or 7 years is that you have pockets of maybe talent acquisition partners who absolutely smash it out of the park and are not only amazing for the candidates and their experience, but also for the recruitment partners to work with as well, which then motivates you more to work with them and kind of be an extension of them into the market. But there's pockets where it's done so poorly that candidates want to avoid, you want to avoid, and that's probably why they're still out there in the market today, still trying to hire for these types of positions. So it can definitely be tainted by a few, I guess, wrong eggs in the fridge.
And again, it is really hard because, you know, these are sometimes, obviously, you do service all different sizes of organisations, but taking into consideration the larger, you know, they are such a large organisation, it's hard to make, you know, your candidate experience feel really accessible to people who are applying and make them really feel a part of the, I guess, process that they've decided to sign on for. You know, they clearly have a vested interest in working for you as a business. And sometimes, you know, it is hard for the TA and hiring staff and hiring managers who are in those organisations to make it really special for them. And you do find them trying their best. But then on the flip side, you do really find them just not seeming to care or seeming to want to make an impact for the people in their process. So it is really hard to strike that balance. But I think we have a few tips
and tricks
that we found that could potentially help.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you like to start with what we think could help?
Yeah, I think it's before even getting to step one in terms of starting the interview process, about being really clear in terms of what you're trying to hire. I think from the get, like the amount of people or like companies that you work with, and you see the job description, and then you have a discussion with the hiring manager, and what they've written down on paper is completely different to actually what they're looking for, and that throws so many candidates off, and it creates a really negative starting point for them. It's the first bit of branding and like the first bit of awareness that you might have as a client into the market to attract the right people, and you're putting it out there. So make sure from the get-go that you are writing and putting together a job description that is exactly what you're looking for, and confirm it with the hiring manager. And don't be afraid to go back to it in, I mean, for the guys in the US, probably 2 weeks, over in Europe, maybe like a month later, and reanalyze and see whether it's still, you know, attracting the right type of person, but also represents what you're looking for as a business. I think that is a really good way to start. It's kind of the correct foundation that you need to put in place.
Cool, we're good, because I've got exactly the same thing on my notes, yeah. And then I think adding to that is, you know, also then making sure that you do update the job description online. You know, it is online, you can update it if your requirements change. Don't leave it sort of as it was before and expect, potentially if you are working with an agency or not, for people to magically read your mind and know what's changed and what's different about your search criteria now. Just, you know, don't be afraid to amend it and keep it as a sort of working document for yourself and for the people applying. I think that's really important. But yeah, that's so funny. It was like my first one.
What are your views actually? Because I know, again, coming from the US, it's some states, for example, you have to be really clear in terms of what the salary looks like. But what are your thoughts for, especially job descriptions when you're starting searches, putting specific details on them for Europe and the US, unless in terms of legality they have to put them on?
I think salary-wise, the attitude in the European market is, if a company is advertising for that role, clearly their salary will be market competitive. You know, they tend to have a good breadth of what is fair in terms of salary and pay. And, you know, if it does sit 10 or 20,000 pounds, you know, K below what it is they're looking for, you know, they probably would stop the process right there and then, because they do very much, and rightly so, you know what they should be being paid. In terms of on a job description, I think it's interesting. I found, you know, the German market specifically, you know, they're very they're very precise on what they're applying for. You know, if they really do feel that the role and the job description that's written fits their background, they'll apply, but they're a bit more hesitant if they see any gaps that potentially they can make up throughout the process within the role, or they might not even realise they have that experience, as it sort of sits as a secondary responsibility to their already, to what they're doing already. And so sometimes talking through with the candidates, oh, so you actually do that, or you do actually have that skill, to help them realise that, and then sort of gets their confidence up to actually apply for those roles as well, that they are very capable of doing. And then interestingly, well, not very interesting, I guess, the benefits and compensation side of the job description, you know, it definitely needs to really relay what the company can offer, you know, in terms of pension and healthcare. Those are key for everyone, I'm assuming, not just in the European market, but that seems to be a very big talking point, even on the initial call when you're first introducing an opportunity to them.
Yeah, it surprises me so much how many people don't put in all the details in terms of what they're offering. It's like, you know, slowly trying to show off to a candidate throughout the process, well, actually, we're adding that in, and oh, we offer this as well. Baffles me. Why don't you just put it from the get-go, and then you know straight away in terms of if someone's committed or they're not committed based on your full offering, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess just from your side in terms of the talking about the salaries, I guess another precept then before putting the job description out is making sure you do your market research to understand what people are offering in that space for that level of role.
Yeah.
Because again, the amount of candidates that get so annoyed when, you know, they find out actually what the salary is, or, you know, they've gone through to the end of the process and they're getting lowballed offers by 20, 30, 40K. Creates a little bit of a sour taste, especially when they're spending hours in terms of the process.
And I guess on terms of the salary piece, then a lot of the companies that we work with, they come to us with a range, and obviously that's more than acceptable. But how do you sort of handle when you are given a very big range, say between even 60,000 range? How do you think that affects your process and their process with the hiring?
I think immediately whenever someone then goes kind of forward and they're at that top half of the bracket, they're expecting to fill 8 and 9, 10 out of 10 of the boxes.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe the people that are coming in at the lower bracket, they're only expected to fit kind of 6 or 7 of those boxes. Which is really interesting, because then you go into kind of the psychology behind reviewing CVs and speaking with candidates. You know, is that person worth 20 or 30K more compared to someone at the lower end who has the opportunity to achieve the same as the higher bracket person?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then linking that to candidate experiences, that as those candidates go through the process, I think obviously negotiations happen. It's the name of the game, you know, that's absolutely fine. But being very clear and open as to why you might not be able to offer that person that 10 grand extra, and where they might be not reaching at this moment during their job process, during this process, but showing a clear pathway to when they do get there, how that can change, sort of, I guess, puts those candidates at ease to know that the company really does value them and value their skill set, but is giving them the knowledge to know why potentially in other processes or in this particular process why they won't be sort of reaching that top range if that's what they expected or thought of when they first signed on to the process.
I definitely feel like we've also missed out a step here.
Oh, 100%.
Slightly.
Of course.
And I actually have done this a few times with clients when they haven't been to where they believe their process is really good in terms of timelines, etc. And that's running through the process yourself. So I've done it before, right, for a biotech over in Massachusetts, where I created the perfect profile on LinkedIn and I put that candidate forward for a role through their LinkedIn job search,
Mhm.
and I went to kind of see how long that process would take. And I came back with the results in terms of it, and actually from submission through to actually having someone reach out to me was something crazy like 13 days, which for them, when on their job posting it said, we'll get back to you in 24 hours, straight away kind of can create a bit of a negative feel on that. So I think walking through a process from start to finish, maybe not as kind of strangely as me had put the profile together, right? But it was a really good example for that client that was very, I think stubborn's quite a nice way of putting it in terms of what that looks like.
Yeah, I to add to that, I think, you know, if it's really good for the candidate experience to have a clear timeline as to when you should expect to receive responses at all stages. But immediately, as you say, if it's 12 days more than they expected, you as a company and as a brand are on the back foot immediately. But also, you know, if you're going to have timelines put in place and be very clear about it, you need to stick to them.
Yeah.
And if you can't, you need to find a way to communicate with these people to let them know. You don't have to go into too much detail as to why, you know, it might be something wrong with your system or something like that, but just to give them the knowledge again that actually this is the reason for the delay, you can expect a response then. Immediately they ease and relax and can focus on you as a company and you as a brand as to how they might proceed through the processes that will come forward. Whereas, you know, if you hear nothing back for 14 days after expecting a response in 24 hours, you're already on to the next company and not even thinking about them because you've discounted them.
Yeah. And in terms of your experience, right, from a customer success perspective, it's always fun to say. Have you found communication with clients, for example? I mean, how have you found communication with clients when they're starting or reviewing their interview process?
I think it's really interesting. I always ask for a run through and a rundown and question around sort of the timings it takes. A lot of the clients we work with are very good. You know, they are really understanding as to, you know, making it a very effective, shorter process than I guess it could be. But there are some who I'm going through and I'm going, goodness, that is a lengthy process and there's so many little tiny steps that these candidates will then have to complete throughout before they even get to speak with a representative of this company. And I think on a whole, they're very receptive to ideas. But there is sometimes that thought of, we get it, we can't change it. And I would encourage companies to really look at it and ask themselves why they can't change it, why they feel that they can't change their processes, because as we've said many times already, these lengthier, tedious processes that drag everything out for, you know, specs of information that you could just give in when talking to someone, will really affect the candidates that you're able to bring in and attract for specific roles.
Yeah, no, it is. I think for me, especially over the last 6 years, nothing like there's so many companies that I look back that we're still working with, for example, that I've been keeping in touch with for that 6-year period where their process hasn't changed at all in the 6 years. And it's not a case that's necessarily bad, because some of them are fantastic, and once they're set in stone, they work perfectly, no matter whether it's you know, a low candidate market or a high candidate market, whether they're rapidly growing or whether they're being a little bit more quiet in terms of headcount growth. But it surprises me still to this day in the amount of companies that sit there with 5, 6, 7, 8 processes.
Yeah.
That is something that I think is the way I always kind of put it about is, realistically, it's not time that defines whether or not a process is going to be successful. It's more about the information that you're able to get and what information aren't you able to pick up from within the first 2 or 3 interviews that you do with a candidate that require you to kind of increase it further from that. And I think especially with, and a lot of that actually comes down to the process itself and actually not being clear with the hiring managers or whoever's on that interview, whether it's a panel or whatever, in terms of what types of questions are they meant to be asking and how are they meant to run the interview as well. the amount of hiring managers and senior people that have never been educated on how to run an interview process is nuts. Like it's crazy when that interview process is the first example of how that company runs and whether or not that candidate would be interested in working with them. If you've got a long process, most candidates walk away thinking, geez, if I've got to go through 6 people in order to get the job, if I need to create a change in my team, am I going to have to go through 6 different people? Is there going to be a lot of red tape? And have you found that as well? I mean, granted, not 6 years, but have you found that during your time as well?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you in as much that, you know, I think TA and hiring managers sometimes forget that this initial, you know, interaction with a company is kind of forming the basis of opinion for, you know, if I were to be employed by you, is this then going to be how the working model within the company is? You know, when you've got great candidates who really want to hit the ground running and impact change, and if they're a more senior hire where they will have the responsibility of leading teams and responsibility of fellow colleagues, you know, having a really effective, open, communicative approach really, I guess, also encourages them to want to work for you even more, because they think, great, this is a place where I can actually make the change I want to happen that I think would be good. And, you know, it's a company where actually it's effective and efficient in terms of getting things done. For you then, if you were to discuss with a company, say, who haven't changed their process in 4 years, what would your advice be to them, and how would you advise that they make those differences? I guess it's always different.
Yeah, it's dependent on the department that you're working with and kind of the size of the organization as well, and maybe how you've supported, maybe like-minded. If I've made placements, or if we as a company have made placements with them, what we would normally do is run a bit of an NPS program. So we'll reach out maybe to all those candidates that have been in the process with them, whether successful or not successful, and get an understanding of how they felt about the process. I think in terms of clients that we, you know, are just about to start working with, I think the main thing for me is identifying other clients who we're actively working with, who are very similar to them, and what their process looks like before we joined them and supported them and, you know, helped with changing their process and the benefits that has brought them.
Yeah.
And I think managing with data is really, really important, because data never lies. But I think that just being completely honest and transparent, you're not going to be able to change everybody in the industry. If everybody had an excellent hiring process, there probably wouldn't be, I don't know, there wouldn't be a lot of upset people and we wouldn't, I mean, probably need to do this as a discussion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, just as a sort of side note, it's not that we want to work with clients and completely change all their processes in every way. That's not what our aim is at all. Our aim is to little minuscule changes that you probably wouldn't even notice, that can really help the candidate experience and that can really help you as an organization further your branding and, you know, keeping your name on the market in a very positive light. You know, it doesn't have to be a massive overhaul of a different process or whatever. It's just these small changes that we're picking up. Like, for example, I guess on a job description, making sure you use inclusive language. You know, you want to hire a diverse pool and get the best candidate for the role. Don't have, you know, the word he in a job description, for example, or even she. Just, you know, making sure it's very inclusive of the talent that you're trying to engage is something so minuscule, but that you might look over with so much on your plate, but actually the candidates who are applying will really notice that, and it might put them off, for example.
Agree. Agreed. And it's interesting that I think, especially around creating a diverse workforce, there was so much discussion about that back in 2020, 2021. It was really at the forefront, and it's been amazing to see actually how that's kind of dropped back, especially over the last 18 months, because it's not at the forefront of companies' minds, which actually does sit with candidates to understand whether or not a company is working to create equal and effective workforce. And I've had candidates turn down companies on the basis of they're not feeling like it's a place that they could see themselves, because they don't feel like it's a diverse, exciting workforce where they will be given the same opportunities as other people within the business.
Yeah,
which is interesting. Another one
yes.
that I would love to get your take on. Starting the process, you find a candidate.
Yeah.
They are about to start the interview process. Packs. So I'm talking about, this is the manager for the role. This is the rest of the team, a little bit of a bio about them. I'm saying, packs, sorry. I'm saying relocation, if they're needing, especially in the US, to relocate to a different state, this is what the school system looks like. This is what housing prices are. Have you seen a lot of companies doing that from the get-go?
No, and I think the reason is that there's a misconception that releasing that information as something as a helpful guide at the beginning of the process uses up resources and time that actually half of those applicants might not need, because they might not go through to the next round. But really, thinking about it now, it's probably only going to help actually encourage people who maybe want to, I guess using the US as an example, want to relocate out of state. They might be really interested in doing so, but haven't taken the time to really look into it and understand what that process looks like. So to have a document or a pack like that that really outlines it just to begin with might encourage them to actually put in that application and go forth with the process. And then similarly, if they've thought about it and look into that information and it puts them off, then the company has done nothing but gain more time on finding the correct candidates, instead of wasting their time, having the candidates go through to the next round, releasing that information like a relocation or school system, and then they immediately drop out. But the TA and the hiring manager were quite interested and looking forward to seeing what that candidate had to say. So yeah, I think it's a major misconception that that type of information shouldn't be released straight away. I don't know, do you agree, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think the whole point of hiring is that you have a role that you need to fill.
Yeah.
And I think it's, again, bonkers, right? That I feel like a lot of the time with a hiring process, it's more about trying to catch a candidate out, trying to see where they're failing.
Yeah.
Whereas actually we should be kind of trying to enhance and giving them all an equal playing field so that everybody can perform at their best at the same day. And if that means giving them as much information as possible, I think it helps.
Absolutely.
Helps massively, and companies don't do it enough. Although on a selfish front, we do it for quite a lot of companies, so feel free to reach out to us.
Pretty certain I've made our marketing team put
Very
out
busy.
a lot of information on really random locations. I'm like, please create this so that we can help our candidates. That's so funny. So I think I know we're jumping around a bit, but while we're on the topic of that initial application, and we've spoken about timely responses, something that SEC here we've implemented that I think works really well and we've received a lot of positive response is a bit more of it's a personal response, but it is automated in as much that we have three, as we go through our applicants to our roles, we have three sort of boxes that we can tick, as in suitable, not suitable, maybe suitable. I don't know if you want to run through what they are, but I'm happy to proceed if you want to.
Keep going.
So essentially, our consultants, myself, yourself, we would go through the applicants and select whether they are suitable, not suitable, or maybe suitable. And those who are not suitable, we still keep your information, we've still looked at what you are capable of, and we'll do our best to match you up to the next role we have available. But what it does give you is a email straight away within 2 days. It auto sends, or if you've managed to view the profile before, you know, the message to say, thank you very much for your application, but not right now. Or this isn't, we don't think, the right role for you. And just on the back of, you know, even if something is so simple as a quick rejection email, we've had so many responses saying, thank you so much for getting back to me. I've actually never, I've been open on the job market for however long, and I've never received even a rejection email. So it's nice just to even be given thought to have someone say no, but thank you back. And then equally for the others, so suitable, obviously you'll get contacted by us. If you're maybe suitable, it's probably not the role, but we think you might have a skill set for another role we're hiring for at that particular point, in which case we will reach out as well. So I think creating those really clear touch points with the candidates, even if it is, you know, a negative response that it's not the right role for you, is really important and actually turns a bad situation positive, which is something I think could be good to implement. Because even I myself, back many years ago when I started applying for roles, I'm still receiving rejection applications from 2 years later. So it's just like, would have been nice within a couple of weeks or a few days just to say, no, we've reviewed your profile, but not right now.
Yeah, it's that hope, and especially for, I guess, my network over in the US, it's the hope of putting, you know, applying to lots of roles realistically, because you might be out of work, and it's the not getting clarity in terms of, am I moving forward, am I not moving forward, am I part of this process? And it's that hope that's kind of really dragging and putting people down. I think rejecting or accepting candidates and being clear and just setting yourself a goal. And I know it's tough. It is so tough right now when, you know, you might spot a role on LinkedIn and it's got like 500 applicants, and you think, how on earth is someone going to run through 500 separate applicants and let them know? And I think that goes back to the job ads, right? If you're putting it up on LinkedIn, for example, because that's where the majority of people put up their jobs, is being really strict in terms of the types of qualification questions that you're putting onto those, to try and move candidates away from applying to your role. Because especially, again, the US, there's a lot of spray and pray at the moment because people are just out of work, and not getting rejection emails is pretty disheartening.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Where do you want to go next? Where are we jumping to?
Gosh, we've set clear expectations. I think when it comes to scheduling interviews, that's probably another place we should go to, because we've handled the start, we've gone through the, you know, the clear need for a clear timeline. You've got your candidates and you're interviewing them now.
Yeah.
How do you make that a good experience for them? I think, obviously, as we've mentioned before, transparency is really key.
Yeah.
But setting a good timeline for the candidate to, one, receive their interview slot.
Yeah.
Understand if that availability works for them. Because not only have you got to arrange the candidate's availability, you've got to arrange the TA's availability, you've got to arrange the hiring manager's availability, and anyone else who's involved in that process at that point. So just being very transparent and open about timeline is really important.
And I think, like, one thing that amazes me, again, I've been amazed so much apparently, but one thing that amazes me is, like, examples of talent acquisition or recruiter or whoever the HR person is reaching out to the candidate, gets availability, and then goes and checks with the hiring manager and the rest of the team.
Yeah.
And there's just so much misalignment. So maybe, again, at the beginning of the process or at the end of every week, get the availability of every manager that might be involved in that process and line them up to, and keep those kind of blocks. You know, if it's a really desperate need to hire now, I suggest normally do 4 to 5 p.m. every single day, and always block that time out with hiring managers so they can't book anything else in. And then you know exactly when a candidate comes back with their availability, you can align it straight away and just plug it straight in. Because there's nothing more annoying than having to rearrange interviews. And consistently go back and forth over what time works best for everybody else.
And to add to that, you know, at the beginning briefing within the companies, when you have the hiring managers sit down with the TA people, whoever's doing their hiring for them, you know, we work in an industry where you might have a audit for a week, you know, coming up, or you might have, you know, sort of an event that you're a key speaker of, you know, something like that. Just taking that time, even at the beginning of the process, and checking in with them weekly and bi-weekly to make sure that, you know, if you know that that week's full with an audit, they can't continue with their hiring, and systems need to be put in place there. I just think sometimes it's overlooked, and, you know, that week might end up being the week that the candidate's having to wait extra, and all of a sudden someone else swoops in and takes them through a process very quickly. And then all of a sudden your best hire or potential best hire is gone.
Yeah. We had one the other day where I entered into a different process with a different client, and it was 3 days turnaround.
Whoa.
and you know, the other client we were working with was baffled as to why, and the candidate was really interested in them, but unfortunately the client didn't understand that them sitting there and mulling over what the next steps look like, or what the offer looks like, was a great opportunity for someone else to come in and get a candidate, you know, at a time when the candidate was feeling a little bit down on the process, not feeling wanted.
And were they'd already been interviewed lots and they've gone through yours?
Yeah, this was like final rounds. They'd just finished up the final round. It was more about end of the process.
So at that point, if the conversation's taking a bit longer than they expect, what would you advise the company to do?
Well, I think that's a problem that should have been determined at the beginning of the process. Again, in terms of clarity, I think at the end of every single interview, you should say to the candidate, hey, heads up, it's going to take us X amount of time, but we might come back to you sooner, but just clear timelines. And this is what the feedback will look like, and this is how we'll deliver it. And actually a really nice way to deliver it is actually via phone, giving them a call, just to run through thoughts and feelings. I know it takes up a little bit of time, but that additional time is quite nice. It gives them a good experience, right? Whether they're getting rejected or moving forwards.
And to add, it only takes 2 minutes out of your day. If something unforeseen comes up that you didn't say at that time of the interview or didn't set out at the beginning, just give that candidate a call and say, hey, we've not forgotten about you. We're still very interested in your profile. It's just that we are having to deal with such and such, you know, whatever it might be. We will get back to you, and then give them a new timeline. If anything, that's only going to help your chances at securing that candidate for the role, not hinder it. And it baffles me that people don't do that as well.
Yeah, it's something so simple. And again, it's how would you like to be treated in the process?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time you've got to take a step back and look at it.
Battling through them.
Yeah, battling through them. I think one that we've kind of spoken a little bit about timing. We get to the end of the process with a candidate and it's not positive. Hiring manager wants to move forward with someone else. So we're giving clear timelines in terms of what that feedback looks like. Are we doing anything else on that call? Are we?
Well, firstly, you said call.
Well, yeah, I mean, sorry,
really
yeah,
important.
first call.
So, like, you've had a candidate go through to multiple interview stages, or however many interview stages you have. If it is a rejection, you know, you never know when that candidate might be the best person for a new opportunity within your business, no matter how far in the future.
42% don't reapply.
Exactly, 42% don't reapply, and 22% tell people not to apply.
Exactly.
So, you know, you never know. So why not spend the time just to give a quick phone call and, you know, give them the reasons and the understanding as to why it's not right now. But you've made a connection with a very good working professional, so, you know, both of you have the opportunity to potentially work with each other in the future, whether that be at the same company or not. You should always leave on good terms.
Yeah.
Equally, at that point, I found and I've heard a lot of the candidates we speak to say that they get all the way through to say even a final stage and then get ghosted. Like they never hear anything back in regards to a bit of a personal touch or even any reason for the rejection. Sometimes they don't even know if they're rejected because they have absolutely no communication. So it's just really important to communicate with the people you have applying for your business.
Yeah, I'm seeing, and on that note, just to scare everybody into making sure that they don't go to candidates, there are so many more people currently naming and shaming companies.
Oh yeah.
Like it's crazy.
I mean, we've been kind, we've not said anyone.
Yeah, no, we've been fine, but there's a lot of people that are naming and shaming now because they're just getting tired of the same types of processes and thinking companies it's acceptable to do that. So yeah, make sure before you get called out on LinkedIn and Glassdoor and all of these types of things. I think it's really, really key. I think one of the best talent acquisition people that I've worked with in my career, whenever they phone them to give them feedback, and it's always in a timely manner that they've laid out, very clear. They will always, even if it's not someone that we've represented, they would recommend that candidate to reach out to us or put us in contact with them as an external agency and say, look, not right for us at the time because of this skill set or the hiring manager wants to go somewhere else. I know that you're looking on the market. I'm going to put you in touch with Jacob at SEC. They've been specialising and I know they work in the space really tightly. If you're interested in pursuing other opportunities, definitely have a chat with them.
Yeah.
And then what they've done is they've, CC'd us into an email and we've been able to support that person.
Yeah.
It's not even just for those people that I guess are out of work, but even those that are kind of passive on the market, that are looking at opportunities, I think is really key. So using your networks and helping people out, especially when you're giving not necessarily the most positive of feedback in terms of rejecting someone from a process, but keeping in touch with them. I think like we've said, right, it's a small industry, making sure to touch base with them maybe 2 weeks time, 2 months time, 3 months time, etc. Because you never know when they're going to be potentially looking again for new opportunities and actually your company might be the right company for them.
And it is difficult though, isn't it? They've got a lot on their plate.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard and we can sit here and say these are the things you should be doing, but we understand why sometimes they don't get done. I think that if everything that you do up to a point, obviously ghosting is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And not giving reason for clear rejection at later stages is really unacceptable. But as long as you're managing your process with all good intentions, I think it does come through.
And is there anything that you, I guess, have worked with clients, for example, any like processes or anything, like an Excel spreadsheet, for example, with what steps need to be taken and candidates and processes? Is there anything that you've seen at all
That works well?
That works well for any specific clients? Or
I think it really does depend on their internal setup and what systems they use. Obviously, we don't have an overview of everything that everyone uses, but the people who I call and can like that be on the candidate profile and know what the hiring manager's feedback is, even if it is negative. Those are the types of people you want to be working with. They clearly really have a process in place to help support and create that good candidate experience. Equally though, if you don't have that in place, we have, as a business, helped set up these small working models for big project-based hiring that say would use, for example, an Excel spreadsheet so that we can have a clear candidate tracker, for example. And it's our resource, but we share it with our clients and we've heard nothing but good things because at the end of the day, we're working alongside you, we're supporting each other, getting to the same end goal. And even if you don't feel like your current system in place is useful for that, that's where consulting an agency like ourselves, who has the time and the ability to do that and keep on top of it with you, is really useful.
Definitely. And I think an overarching message from us probably is that, and we've spoken about a lot, right, in terms of why you need to create a really good strategy and what does that strategy look like in an ideal situation. But like you mentioned earlier, right, it's not a case of ripping everything that you've done up and restarting again. It's about making small changes over a long period of time and being consistent with those changes. So I think making sure that you're documenting the processes that you have now and then what you have in the future, and looking at, you know, how long does it take for a candidate from them submitting their CV to go all the way through the process? What has the retention rate in terms of candidate acceptance, for example, compared to candidate rejections for one team look like to another in terms of those different processes? So make sure that you're documenting, you're consistently improving and analysing what you're doing. I think setting up kind of a quarterly review with the hiring managers as well, bringing them and getting them involved in the process is something that's really, really important. But don't be scared. There's a lot to change with a lot of processes, and just take it one small change at a time. I think conscious of time.
Yeah.
Because we have been.
Oh God, it's flown.
I feel like this one is definitely flown by, because it's so important. I think it's something that a lot of companies still really struggle with, and even the best of the best still need to make incremental changes from time to time. From your side, anything else you want to
add? I think from my opinion, my experience and what I've seen, I think there is a bit of, currently on the market, there's a bit of a disconnect between the application process and seeing the applicants as people. So just to reiterate everything that we have discussed already, I think the key is, no matter how large or busy you are in your business, to remember that the people applying are exactly like you. And you know, if you are then looking for a new job and it happens to you, you only really have yourself to blame, because you know what's not being done within the organisation that you could then improve in your own time. And being really open and honest and clearly communicative is really important, and I don't think it's done enough. So yeah, as you were saying, no matter how small the change, as long as it's probably geared towards that honesty, the open communication, and being quite collaborative, I don't think you can go far wrong with creating a good candidate experience.
Great.
Yeah.
Questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, as always.
Cool. So we've got a couple of questions here today. First one is, what's the best way to go with feedback from candidates about their experience?
Oh yeah, we actually haven't spoken about this yet. One thing that we have been implementing at SEC is the use of candidate surveys. And I guess it's up to the discretion of when you want to introduce the fact that there will be a candidate survey at the end of the process. I would advise on discussing it at the start, just so that, you know, even if they don't take note of it and it's in their, you know, in their mind. But yeah, being very clear that actually it would really benefit themselves again if they were to apply through the company, but also linking it to the 22% who wouldn't advise their colleagues, you know, telling them that the survey actually will really help the company or us improve the candidate experience, might then limit that shocking statistic and encourage people to still apply and encourage their colleagues to still apply, because they know that yes, it might not be a perfect process, but they are making steps to make it better. Yeah,
I think just, and with that survey, the types of questions just need to be around, you know, what was good, what needs to be better, what do we need to start doing, and what do we need to stop doing. And I think even if you just have a simple 4-questionnaire like that, you'll start to see, hopefully, a correlation between what's working really well and what's really not working well at all, that you can change quite quickly.
Yeah, and if you are, say, needing to take this information to your managers or higher ups to impact that change within your business, having the evidence there from the candidates you have interviewed and had through the processes through all departments in your company is only going to be anything but helpful in terms of you affecting that change.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. And then our final question is how can we get hiring managers more involved in improving the overall experience for the candidates?
I'll let you start with this one if you want.
It's a tough one because a lot of the time they've got other bits and bobs going on in their lives that they need to get, like their actual job that they need to get on with, right? For me personally, I think always providing data is so key. So like with the survey, for example, you're able to go ahead with that data and to demonstrate. I think it's funny, hiring managers most of the time, or that I've experienced, only start caring or getting invested in this when they start having a really bad track record of hiring. And actually getting candidates involved or through processes, that's when they start to look in towards themselves. I mean, what about for you?
So I guess maybe a good starting point before you ask the hiring managers to get more involved is to understand if your process is being hindered by hiring managers' involvement, or if it's being improved by hiring managers' involvement. You know, if it's going to be improved by the hiring managers' involvement and everyone who's spoken to them are really, you know, happy and would want to be part of the company, I would err on the side of going to them and asking them what they do during their process that gives them such good feedback.
Yeah.
Equally, if you're getting negative feedback, it's probably time to, you know, take the time out. Sorry, the hiring managers, and they've got a lot to do, like so much to do. I completely respect that, but you know, taking the time to give them some interview training to make sure that all their interviews are quite fair and equal for every candidate, and taking the time to really understand, you know, the types of questions they want answering, and finding good ways to put that across so that, yeah, it might be very direct and straight to the point. That's absolutely fine, but you can word it in a different way to not put the candidate off. Yeah, for example.
Definitely. And I think now is the right time to start doing it as we're approaching start of Q4, where it's going to ramp up for a lot of companies because they've got leftover budget from the year, or they haven't made their Q3 hires. You know, there's a lot of dry powder out there at the moment in terms of investment opportunities for a lot of companies, which means more cash going into the industry, which means more hiring. And, you know, beginning of next year, there's JP Morgan, which always creates a bit of spin in terms of, is it going to be a good year? Is it going to be a bad year? And then we're straight into Q1 hiring. So there's a lot that's going to be happening. And the last thing you want is to miss out on great opportunities by hiring great people by not having the right processes and not having the right structure in place.
Absolutely, completely agree.
Cool.
I hope that's helped.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want, you know, I don't want this to come across like you need to change your processes, but you know, if you are struggling with the process and you are struggling to retain and attract that talent, like I hope this discussion has helped in any way.
Yeah, and if there's anything else or any information that you need, or you even just want to run by someone in terms of what the right process is, just like reach out to us. We're more than happy to have a chat. It doesn't have to result in us sitting there asking for opportunity and for roles. We want to help the industry, I think, as much as possible to hire the right people for the right companies in order to create life-changing drugs for people.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's really what it is about, isn't it?
For us.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's everything. Thanks, Izzy. First one.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be a few more to come as well.
Oh gosh, if the people aren't bored by me, I'll come back on.
Right, thanks guys. If anyone on has any other questions, feel free to email us. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you.